All right, I'd like to call public property to order here. Present, we have Councilor Seeker, Councilor Di Maria, and I'm Councilor Condon, the chairman. Also, we have Ryan O'Malley and Baker Rowe. We have our attorney, John McNutt. So, at this point, John, can you give us an overview of the community center?
Oak Grove Community Center
Yes.
situation?
And then I'll call on the counselor, and then I'll open it up to questions. Okay?
I'm going to be as brief as I can, but then
Yep.
you can ask questions if you wish. A complaint was filed with the AAB, the Architectural Access Board of Commonwealth, Massachusetts, almost 2 years ago. And that complaint had validity because there was very little access, if you will, to someone who might be severely handicapped. For example, wheelchair. And that doesn't leave out anybody else, but that's just an example. And the problem was that the old building, about 100 years old, had 2 floors. And the only floor that had a bathroom was downstairs. Now, although it had 2 bathrooms, one of them was quite large and had been added to accommodate the circumstances many years earlier. The access to the first floor was solely from the side where the MBTA station is, and it was a grade into and over a threshold. The access to the upper floor, if you will, of the Oak Grove Community Center was from the front stairs or from a back entrance, neither of which conformed to the necessity of the law regarding accessibility for handicapped persons. So we appeared before, the City of Malden appeared before the Access Board, and we heard them give us an order that we come back with some type of plan to do whatever we could. That plan was submitted approximately 11 to 12 months later with the approval of the AAB. They gave us the additional time to do it. And with some twitches and turns to the plan, they agreed that if the city did it, the city would be compliant within the realm of the law. Now, the law says that the value of the building has a lot to do with whether or not it's fully compliant or partially compliant. If a certain amount of money had not been or had been spent on the building, the percentage is 20% of the value of the building within a 3-year period. And let's assume more than 20% had been spent. Then the building would have had to have been made fully compliant for use by the citizens. Fully compliant. The value of that would have far exceeded the value of the building, which was only $175,000. If, however, that triggering mechanism had not taken place, and the amount spent on the building within a 3-year period from the date of the complaint was less than 20%, then the law requires compliance, but within the plan that is suggested. An architect was hired by the City of Malden, expert with regard to architectural access was hired by the City of Malden. A plan came up, and that plan was accepted by the AAB approximately 9 months ago. We were supposed to have bids on that, or at least some idea of how much it would cost by December 15th of 2015. We couldn't meet that deadline. We asked the Architectural Access Board for additional time, and they gave it to us. The matter went out to bid after the specifications were completed, so that anybody bidding on it would know what they would have to buy and how much effort and work they'd have to do. And this week, we got the bids back. These bids have not been produced to the Architectural Access Board because they just came in. At the last meeting before this committee, I informed the committee that I needed the committee's authority to at least seek some bids so we could know whether or not the city could or would spend the money for the purpose of making that building, the Oak Grove Community Center, accessible to the handicapped. So out went the bids, and there was one bid that came in, the lowest bid, for $56,600. As I understand it, there is a necessity for the city to determine whether or not it wishes to spend this money, to enter into this contract, or to not spend the money. That is not my job. My job is simply to get the information provided to you and allow you to make your decision. So that's it in a nutshell.
Ryan, you want to give us some sort of an overview, if you have some sort of a plan for this building? Maybe at one time I know it was quite active.
So I'll just pass this out.
Just one question, John.
Yes.
Where would they make that handicap accessible? The rear, the side, the front? Where?
It would be, for the handicapped, it would be the rear, because it's easiest for the handicapped to get in.
And that would be accessibility to which floor?
To the, both floors, but the rear with regard to the upper floor. For the lower floor, it would be from the side. That is the MBTA station side.
So they would do both?
They would do both to make it compliant for anybody, compliant with the statute and with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts regulations.
So you feel confident they would accept that?
Oh, we know they would. They approved the plan.
Okay.
The AAB approved the plan, but we didn't know how much it was going to cost. If the cost was excessive over and above whatever funds there might be to do this work, then the city has a decision to make whether or not they wish to spend that over and above whatever funds the city has. If it's under, then it's up to the city to determine whether or not it wishes to pay that money. Okay. Ryan?
Thank you very much, Chairman. So we're talking about the Oak Grove Community Center, as you guys all know. So I prepared this just kind of show you guys the history of the building, the importance of the building to the community, and what we are currently facing in terms of whether or not we decide to invest in this building in the community, or whether or not we allow this to go to the wayside. So I wanted you guys to really understand the history here and what it really means to our community. So as you can see, this is what it currently looks like on the front page. I took this probably in September, and I've been inside the building. The building currently right now is in the same way it was when it was closed. There's really not much work aside from the handicap accessibility discussion that we had that needs to be done to this building. So on the second page, you'll see that there's the history here. In 1915, I have to give credit to OGA, Oak Grove Improvement Association, for these facts. It was when they first started having meetings in the Oak Grove neighborhood. So that was pretty much a 100-year anniversary last year. The actual building that we have now was constructed in 1926. So we're talking about a historic building from all of its standards. As you can see there, there's also an overview of the area. The Oak Grove Community Center is in the northwest corner, but that's the left corner, or towards the left corner on this intersection here. Just kind of give you a perspective of this building. It's not a very large lot. It's not a very valuable lot in terms of real estate, but it's very important to the community in terms of the use this. On the next side, you'll see the community need. And this is where I really kind of wanted to show you guys that a lot of groups use this building and depend on this building in the past. A lot of these places don't have a home right now. In the last 2 years, they've had to kind of scramble. A lot of the places are very temporary. We have many 501c3s who are using this. We can help, I think, in the future contribute to the maintenance of the building. And we have the CPA coming up in the future. There's definitely ways that we can really turn this building into all that it can be. Moving on to the next page, you'll see this is where I'm kind of showing you guys the as-is status. So as Attorney McNaught explained, well, he didn't explain, but we do have $79,000 allocated to this building regarding capital improvements to the building. That's something that probably Chuck could elaborate on. As Attorney McNaught explained, we do have an order that the city made the building handicap accessible. That came in 2 years ago, so I think we're a little bit overdue in terms of doing this, but we do have an order that the city made this building handicap accessible. And the ABA, so the AAB, the Architectural Access Board, has also accepted this plan as indicated by Attorney McNaught. We do have a way forward. We also have the bid from Bay State Construction, which is a small construction company, and they're going to be doing the work for $56,000, which is well within the 79. And that would still leave $23,000 left over for future maintenance, if so needed. It's had a new roof recently. The sidewalk has been repaved outside it. There's been a driveway, and in the back has also been paved. So there's been a lot of improvements made to this building already. And now really what we're just doing is opening it. So the action plan, which I don't want to get into too much because it's kind of an up in the air thing in terms of a draft, but there's an Oak Grove Center committee that can meet and help with the management of this building. There are existing rules and regulations for the building. And then you'll also see that I've attached copies of the senior center's rules and guidelines governing use and rental. Really, we're not going to be reinventing the wheel here. The use of this building can definitely be modified from this existing type of agreement. It's something that the city has accepted. It's something that city council has accepted. So I'm not really looking to reinvent the wheel here. I'm just looking to take an existing document and apply it to a different building. There's also a rental application and acknowledgement form. On this form, you'll see that it also requires insurance certificates and liability waivers. So these are all things that the city has decided will be the policy for using public buildings, and this building would also be in line with that. So really what I'm asking, I think, you guys tonight is to believe in this building. It's more than just a building. It's really a symbol of our community. I think that considering the CPA has just been passed, considering the fact that this space is really needed by our community and by the community groups, I would hope that you guys would support it, accept the bid from Bay State Construction for $56,000, and help open the building. Because it's really the only options we have is to get rid of the building and not comply with the AAB order, or to open it and make it handicap accessible. Any questions?
Council Scott.
Sorry, I'm trying to so Ryan, I have a couple questions. One is, great work.
Thank you.
I'm gonna start with the bad and then I'll go to the good.
Appreciate that.
The bad is, I wasn't completely in favor of the rental agreement for the senior center, because I think what happens is, we start out with good endeavors, and then before we know it, we're renting out to organizations that are somewhat involvement-based, and you bring $100 in, and then there's $400 worth of actual use. And my concern here is also, when you start renting out this, to me, I mean, all the local areas that have been currently using, I think is low impact in that area. But I think if you open up a full-fledged rental agreement, there's no parking. I mean, there's zero parking. So while you've got to have some type of agreement, I think it's got to be limited in scope. You know, like the Boy Scout troop around there, like opening this up just, because you can't take and then again, I'm saying this, the senior citizen policy, I fought hard to make sure that didn't go the way it was originally drafted. I'm still not crazy about it. Because I don't think we build buildings to make them rental facilities. We build buildings for community, but we've gone down that path and we've tried to turn around, we can't. So that would be my concern. I think we have to look at this agreement. The second thing is the cost. When you say that $56,000, we already have that money in the current budget?
Yes. It's at $79,000
And where
and some
is it?
change.
It was part of a bond.
Is it still there though?
Yes.
I believe it is.
He stepped up, but it is part of the CIP.
It was part of that.
I know we originally did. I just don't-
Next one.
Okay. It's still there?
Yep. I confirmed that many times during this process. I appreciate the feedback you received. I wouldn't get too caught up in the weeds. I do want to note that I did take existing policies and procedures just to keep them in line with what has been accepted. But obviously they can be modified based on further discussions. But I think really What I'm focusing on tonight is really opening it up, and I think that the nitty-gritty stuff, we have time to deal with that. Right now, it's really trying to live up to the order that the AAB has kind of put down in the city, and making sure that this building.
And then one other thing, and I know the Oak Grove Community Group has done, good work down there, but can we legally allow them to manage the property on our behalf?
I wouldn't necessarily be able to comment on the legality of that.
No.
Okay.
But I do know that there are friends groups from many different facilities that do help. I know that they do like cleanups of parks, weights.
I think I agree. I'm just saying, I'm splitting hairs because it says it will manage the building on the city behalf. I agree, you're right. I mean, they've been doing work down there, they've been volunteering, they've been taking care of the building, but to me, that's a very formal, when they say we're gonna let them manage the property. I don't think we can allow them to manage the property from that aspect.
Understood.
Mike from the chief is going to put this together as far as who's going to have the keys, who's going to open and close the building, who's going to make sure that the insurance waivers are signed and approved by our law department to avoid any kind of
Well,
lawsuit.
there won't be insurance waivers. There might be waivers of liability,
Waivers
but there'll
of
be a
liability.
requirement of insurance by each person group that needs it for a certain fare at a certain time, or over a long period of time. My recollection is that at the time prior to its closing of the building, there was a religious group that used it every Sunday. And they complied completely with whatever was necessary for insurance and waiver of liability at that time.
Would you be taking that on?
I would definitely be very actively involved. I definitely would be actively involved, but I do think that it also, as you kind of described, I think that we had discussed potential involvement of both maybe public facilities to some limited degree, but then also I know that I spoke with Lisa regarding scheduling, and in terms of that, helping with that, there's a potential that we could help, the clerk of communities can help with some of the scheduling of it. It's something really to be determined. I do think there is a way forward with this regarding the maintenance. In terms of in terms of scheduling, in terms of access, there's just a few ideas that, and there's plenty of ways we can do this. An electronic key box where you have a code that changes on a regular basis. Remote access, the building is internet connected. It is connected to the city's network. So there are different ways that we can really make this building self-sufficient in terms of the maintenance and access. I know that the Comcast agreement is coming up in terms of security system, if that's really the way we want to go. I don't really think it's necessary, but there are ways that we can really make this building self-sufficient and provide access without much burden on the city.
And like, what's your thought on what you would charge, say, to let these groups use it?
I think there would definitely be a nominal fee. I think that if we're talking about, because I mean, we're not looking to really make money off the building, but just enough to keep it afloat in terms of the limited maintenance that's required. I think that something like $50 or $25, not per hour, but per use. If it's a company, or if not a company, if it's a nonprofit or a group that's going to use it on a regular basis, maybe we can enter into a yearly agreement for a set price. These are all things that I definitely would be open to discussing. But I don't think that we should really be charging a significant amount of money for this.
Councilor DiMaria? No.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Brian, for all this great work. This is wonderful. And I'm going to start by saying that as we grow as a community, we can't forget our tradition in Malden. We are steeped with tradition, and the Oak Grove Community Center is 100 years old. I think just a couple of questions. So, Attorney McNaught. So,
John's okay.
John's okay. So my question is, with the Architectural Access Board, they gave us the requirements and guidelines to go out for this RFP.
That's accurate.
So we followed those guidelines.
Yes.
We sent out the RFP.
Yes.
And we have
You have
one
a bid.
that's come back within our line item budget. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So this board
Well,
can't...
the line item budget that was outlined by Councilor Ryan O'Malley as I understand it, is accurate. I talked to Chuck earlier, and so the $56,600 bid by Bay State Building and Remodeling is well within the assigned funds.
I think when we voted on this a year ago, when you came to us, I believe it was the thought of the council to go out to see if we could get something within the budget. I don't know how many of us thought we really could get that, so I'm very pleased that we do have a licensed company that can do that and make this ADA required, so I'm very happy about that. So you don't see any snags within this architectural access board saying that we haven't met our requirements?
No, I don't.
Okay,
No, as a
so,
matter of fact, if the bids had been significantly higher, then I would think that that would be so.
okay.
And there were two other bids.
So we received 3?
We received 3 bids. The second highest was twice the lowest bid, and the third highest was 3 times
Wow.
the lowest bid.
And where is Bay State? Are they local?
Yes, Salem.
Salem, Mass.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
I misread that.
So that's good. My other concern would be what we might need to do as we move forward, should we move forward with this, is to draft up some sort of expenditure of what this building is actually going to cost us over a year, and base maybe our rental agreement on that, so this building is completely self-sustained. That I don't think the city really can afford another expense the way I'm hearing what's coming down. So, but I truly, also to Councilor Spatafora's comment, we're not building buildings to rent, Councilor. This is a historic building that I do believe is part of our community that we just can't dismiss. So I'm very much,
If I'm right from the chair, we still heat this building minimum. I mean, it's not at 70 degrees, but we are paying heating bills, and I would suspect that someone's going to have to be in control of that since you're young and energetic. This is all on you.
Absolutely.
But from the chair, I would say that I remember the Oak Grove Community Center and very, very active groups there. That building was used. And I think it's something that this neighborhood needs. Because I look at a lot of the buildings we sold off, and I gotta be honest with you, I would have fought like hell against the Emerson School. Because I always felt that that was a runoff of our increased enrollment on the west side. Because if you look at the west side, you have the BB school. That's what you have. So, I mean, the charter school has it now. We're not gonna get it back, for sure. But I think when we look back as the years go by, I think we'll be sorry that we did sell that school because it's in pretty decent shape. And this building isn't gonna bring in a lot of money. It isn't gonna cost us a lot of money, but it's gonna be an opportunity to bring that neighborhood together. And personally, from the chair, for $56,000, and what you could get on that building. First of all, that neighborhood would fight like hell if you think you're gonna put anything in there. It's gonna be disturbed because there's no place to park the cars. So that's my opinion from the chair.
and just one more suggestion, since it is a public building, with all due respect to our director of public facilities, would that be something that Eric could manage or kind of hold the reins on?
I personally feel that, you know, these groups, they're very active. I think, you know, with Ryan at the controls here, that he can set something up. And the responsibility can fall on the groups that are gonna be using it to keep it clean. You know, he's not gonna get a custodian. We don't have one to give him. So,
I'll be out there with the broom.
exactly. But, you know, if anybody has a motion, I mean, we can always come back and revisit this in like 6 months and see how you're doing there. But I'd like to see us move forward to make it handicap accessible. And recommend that the mayor sign the
I'd
contract.
like to make a motion to accept.
Can I just ask, you know, let me just, hold on. I think it's important, and I want to make sure I get this in the record, I think it's important, that the building is fine. I mean, I agree, you can't do anything else with that property, I don't want to see a parking lot there, and the money is small. But I don't want to set precedent where the building is still public facilities. Because my concern is, we had problems with the schools with rentals. The senior center came down, and we started with this very wide open agenda that turned into exactly what a few councils up here said, where it wasn't being rented for community groups, it was renting for dinner events, and it was private use. So I think we have to be careful, because I think, and I'm not saying anything bad about the groups, but I don't think we can put all the pressure on the groups to maintain a property that we're ultimately responsible
It's a
for.
public building, it falls under public property.
Exactly right, and
Public property oversees all
and I
public
think the
buildings.
use that it did in the past.
And we
Yeah,
set the policy.
Yes, but I think the
Right,
use,
that is trying to say.
Yeah.
yeah, the use that was there before, it was the Boy Scouts, it was the Oak Grove Community Center, they used to do, baseball signups there, all that stuff, right, to me is ideal for that.
Yeah.
I just think, I want to be very careful, because we see how these documents, these rental, this is not, I mean, Ryan wasn't here, but these evolved into, they're competing with, we have fraternal, in the National Note Council, we have clubs around here that are dying because they have no rentals, right? You know why? Because the city has gone into the rental business, right? And you know why? Because we charge $25, and every group wants to go there. Before you know, we can't say no to the Boy Scouts, or yes to the Boy Scouts, and no to Mr. and Mrs. Smith who wants to have their Christian there, because we have to have some controls there. And I think the use that was there before is exactly the same type of use that we should put in there.
I think
And
that's
this
the
frightens
intent
me.
of the council, to be honest with you. I think that is the
No, I agree, but I want to go on the record and say that
council
because,
O'Malley, and like I said, that's why I would like to review
Yeah.
things. Maybe have some sort of meeting in June to review things, see how things are going. And we can review it in the
Yeah.
fall again, and if we have to make some changes, we can tweak it, but at least we can give them an opportunity to get it going.
no, that's fair, I mean, that's all.
So I'd like to make that motion to accept. Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
have just a question about committee. You know how we talked about, I mean, we've had this conversation a while about the access board, and now if it's that we spend 20% more than what the building is worth over 3 years. Now, this is going to be way over 20%.
This, though, was approved by the board several years
So
ago.
does that sort of, that
And
starts?
it's a 3-year period, so to speak.
Okay.
So we will not trigger by applying what the board ordered us to do. Full compliance, we will only have to do what the AAB ordered us to do.
And if we get a complaint because we aren't in full compliance and that, hinders somebody else going,
We have
are we
to,
kind of then
we have to go
down?
back before the AAB.
Exactly, I just, thinking down the road, because that, we should do full compliance as, like you said.
So what a complaint be?
Anybody can make a complaint before the AAB that a public facility is not handicapped access.
But isn't this facility going to be handicap access?
It will, when we do
Partially.
this, we'll do it to the satisfaction of the Architectural Access Board.
Oh, so this doesn't,
We're doing it
this
according to
doesn't
what they
close our
requested.
potential liability?
No, it does
It
not.
never does. This is America.
Yeah.
No, I know.
You can
No, but
make a
it's
complaint
only-
anytime you want.
Touche,
First and
Counselor.
second
I mean,
floor will
filing
have,
suits is a varsity sport.
Touche.
First and second floor will be handicap accessible.
Both will
correct?
be handicapped access. There is a drawback to this plan, which was mentioned by the AAB, but they didn't require anything to do about it because the expense would have exceeded, combined with this, would have exceeded the value of the building.
What's the drawback?
The drawback was an elevator. Let's assume during the course of the bad weather, a 3 to 4, 5 month winter, and people are having a gathering on the upper floor, and someone in a wheelchair has to go to the lower floor. Well, they're going to have to go out the back of the building, go all the way around the building, and then in the MBTA side of the building to get to the bathrooms. I think that's a significant problem for a handicapped person. But the AAB approved it, because otherwise, if we had to do that work, my memory is that it would have been significantly more and probably equal to the value of the building.
So we have to shove it.
Well,
We had to shove
problem,
them anyways, but
the
now
other
we really have to
problem
shove
was, do you keep the building then? Or do you use it for another purpose, storage, or it's up to the city to do what it wants?
So that's just my concern, is I do think, yeah, that, I mean, I don't mind to get rid of the building, I don't think that is, they're known that in, for some of those groups, known that the police station is gonna have community room too, and there are some other options. But I'm a little concerned that we are going to have people, an elderly person going out and coming in. And is there a way to see if there's another plan that can fit in within the budget, but that's a little more palatable to the community?
Well, this plan, I don't know if you've seen it, I don't have the specs with me, I didn't think it was necessary to bring the specs tonight. But it is compliant with allowing all handicapped people to use the building, both floors. The only drawback is the rent.
If I might, from the chair, the fact that the board approved the plan, wouldn't that mitigate any sort of future complaints
Well,
on the
I would suspect this.
handicap access?
I would suspect this. If any further complaint would come about shortly after the building was brought into compliance as required by the AAB, and another complaint comes before the AAB, they would see, this is what we ordered.
What if it was years later?
Well,
You're
the
saying
years
sure,
may
yeah.
change, years may change a lot of things. It may change, the law may change as it has in the past 15 years with regard to access. And it may be even more stringent in the future, requiring cities and towns to do more. I can't foresee that, but it's possible.
We all set Council Crowe? Council Mel?
So I definitely appreciate the feedback you guys have offered tonight. I do think that we kind of hit a good point here. This is a historic building. It's never going to be perfect, but we are in compliance. We will be, if we do this work, in compliance with the architectural access board. It will be handicap accessible. I do think that it will succeed. I think this is something that we need to believe in. I know you mentioned the community room at the police center, the police station. I think it definitely serves a different community. This is a building that's right off the train. It serves two different locations, two different wards, two different locations in the city. So I do appreciate that the police station will have a community room, but I don't think that this is necessarily going to compete with that. I don't think we'll be able to handle the amount of use that our community groups really need, especially right now, with everything going on.
If I might ask you, Councilman, what would we have to do? Maybe move for a recommendation that the mayor move forward to sign the contract on the handicap
There'd have to be a
accessibility?
motion or a recommendation, motion for a recommendation to the full city council. City
Move
council would
forward
then
with the
vote on whether or not this should be accepted and recommend to the mayor to sign it. If that's what the committee wants.
Yeah. So I have a motion by Councilor Di Maria that we move forward with a recommendation that the mayor sign the contract to make the building handicap accessible.
$56,600. Bay State Building and Remodeling of Salem, Massachusetts.
Do I have a second? Do I have a second from the committee? I think it's just heating the building and electrical use. I don't know the actual cost, but,
That's why
yeah,
I think next week you see what's coming.
yeah. There's 79,000 in that bond issue.
No, I'm not talking about the bond issue. I'm talking about keeping the building open.
was talking about, and
It's a minimum.
Brian was talking about, setting the use fee to cover the cost of the operation.
To identify that.
Heat, we're just talking about heat and electricity here in the one-room building.
What those costs were usually determined.
Just so everyone is clear in terms of what we're talking about here, is if we don't do this, we're getting rid of the building. That's what this vote is. It's either we get rid of the building and not comply with the AAB, or we open the building and comply with the AAB. That's what this vote is.
But we technically might not even be in compliance with the AAB. We could be sued in years for having an outside handicap accessible.
Would we be in compliance? I could sue for this building. You could sue for any building. The way he was saying, you could sue for any building. We can't stop.
They're the ones that approved what we have to do. They approved it. Said this is what you
And
have
he
to
said
do.
shortly thereafter though, and then he said he can't.
The question I think was posed, whether or not the law could change and it could cause a more stringent requirement of the city to do more for the handicapped. And that could happen, but I can't foresee that. That's crystal ball to see if the legislature would do something. The fact of the matter is, this would make us compliant if we did do it.
Do you think that we can see the operating costs and all that before we actually make this vote? Because I don't think that we have enough money to even put $1. I don't want to close your building, I totally understand. But I just think before we make this vote, we should be able to see all of this in front of us.
Okay, I think the council said he wanted to do a plan to,
But what if it can't, it's not self-sufficient?
The operating-
We put $56,000 into this building.
The operating cost of this building is so negligible. It's a one-room building. We're heating a one. We're putting a one light on. The cost of this building is so small, especially when you consider the amount of energy and money we're putting into this building. This is such a small building. The operating cost here would not impact this decision. It's one room.
I mean,
Well, it's 2 floors, so it's gotta be more than 1 room, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's 2 rooms,
two
with
rooms.
electricity.
I would just ask the
wanna-
councils to think about if you had this bill, okay, that was so active for so many years, with so many groups, if you would want to sell it for some sort of short money, all right? Or do you think the community needs it? To get, and we're gonna review it. Again, I told you we'd review it 4 to 6 months and see how things are going. We can review it every 4 months to see what's coming in, how much it's costing us. But, I don't know, I've had a building sold in one too. I told you, very upsetting to me, you know, that we lost that school. Could have been an overflow for our public school. But, you know, sold a lot of buildings. It's a short fix. You know, it's short money.
I also wanted to mention
It's up to the committee.
that there's 2 other funding sources that we could be talking about. The Community Preservation Act, which was in the past. This is something that definitely will be supported by that group, the Community Preservation Committee. And this is the reason, this building is the reason, this is one of the reasons why this committee really formed. There are also a number of nonprofits, 501c3s that can get grant money. And there's the Freedom Association, Friends of Oak Grove, Incorporated. These are some of the groups that are able to get funding, do have funding. I'm sure we support them. I can't speak for them necessarily, but I know that the representatives of these groups are here. And this building will be taken care of. This building will not be especially if you consider the amount of effort we're putting into the building versus the benefit that we're going to get. This is a really great investment.
So I have a motion by Councilor Maria. Get a second. Second by Councilor Seeker. All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
So it goes to full council, right? Right, it goes to full council?
Recommendation of the committee is to move forward and sign the contract. Make it handicap accessible.
So I did actually want to speak with the council president regarding that. I'm not sure if we have, I'm not sure how this bid will work. There's I think 30 days to respond to a bid. It's a small construction company. I don't necessarily want to put them in limbo. I know that they've been calling the controller pretty regularly, asking what the status is. They do know that they're the lowest bid. I think they kind of assume that that's kind of how we would decide whether or not to award. I know that they need to go out to get a bond. So I'm not sure if that's maybe something that you would be moving on tonight.
I'm not in favor of moving this out tonight. What's the date on that paper?
Date on bid?
The date on the bid?
January 13th.
So we're
But they weren't, that was when we submitted.
Okay.
They weren't opened until a period of time after that. I have to ask our controller, Chuck, what date it was opened. That was triggered.
I still don't see it as an emergency, so it's if things don't come out in the committee, and I think wait until it comes.
Okay, so we have a vote on, you can contact the mayor's office, and then it'll come out of committee next week.
So it'll be, do you want me to appear for the?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes, please. There's
Right.
a number of councils here who have not heard what's going on. And I, for one, would like to, if I could second Councilor Seeker's question, I, for one, would like to see, I guess Councilor Kinnon brought it up first, the cost of maintaining the building before I make any decision next week, so.
Absolutely.
I'm off committee, but I know that's a piece of information I'm going to want to see before I take any type of vote next week.
I'll talk with our city controller and see if we can come up with some sort of an estimate on what it might cost, some sort of an estimate on what we could, as far as renting from these groups, and the possibility of any kind of future grants.
I think the other thing we probably have to look into as far as potential cost. And again, this is not actually those groups. If they're gonna rent that out one at a time, we're probably gonna have to have somebody there on site, a janitor, to make sure that side, well, Kyle's a con. You cannot trust somebody to shovel that sidewalk and then come outside in a wheelchair and go in the bathroom and not slip and fall and don't think we're gonna get sued. Because you know that's gonna happen. That happens everywhere. If it's not properly sanded and solved, and then a handicapped person comes out and goes outside to go to the bathroom and they fall, who do you think they're gonna sue? And our answer is, we don't have anybody there.
The sidewalk already needs to be shoveled right now. It's the same situation we're in right now. It's a public sidewalk outside of a
He's
public
talking about
building.
the
I'm
ramp.
talking about grant.
The ramp is just like this big. It's just this is a small, this isn't like a major ramp. The amount of space we're talking about to get up is like that much. There's just a lip in the back and a lip in the bottom. So we're not talking about a large ramp whatsoever.
No, no.
How'd they get into the second
No,
floor?
who's gonna shovel the sidewalk? Who's gonna shovel the walkway?
DPW, the same people who are shoveling it now. It's a public
But if you rent it
sidewalk.
out on a Tuesday night, and it's snowing, they might not get there till Tuesday morning. Or Wednesday morning, and you need to make sure that's maintained. I mean, I'm saying, if you're renting it out, let's say during not rent, you're gonna rent it out. You always have to envision, if somebody's handicapped, and they do gotta come out of that facility, right? And they gotta walk outside to use the facilities, and God forbid something happens, even if it happens when it's not snowing out, we're gonna be sued. But my point is, I wouldn't wanna give them any ammunition, not that I wanna see a janitor cost, but I think we gotta be, from a risk standpoint, it'd be crazy not to have somebody there.
From a risk standpoint, this is a risk that we face on every public building, every public sidewalk. This is no different than anywhere else in the city.
But hold on, Council, with all due respect, if you get somebody who has to leave outside in a wheelchair, without a ramp, back in the building, that to me, and I'll defer to the legal, that's completely different than me in a wheelchair and going towards the bathroom in the same building. We have to have them leave the facility and go outside in the elements and go back into the facility. That's completely different than walking down a hallway.
To go to the back.
Yes, they have to do
Yeah, they gotta do it.
I mean, that's my, I mean, I think before, I mean, I'm all for investing in the building, I just think we have to, especially with the rental, maybe we have to think this out as far as,
You know, again, on the rental, we're talking about us having a city employee for the rentals, right?
No,
We're giving keys out to people.
We have an electronic key box.
This is a community building that's been around for 100 years.
Yeah.
It's 2 rooms, I apologize. I mean, we can complicate this, and I understand that that's one way to go. But we should also, I mean, I appreciate if you guys could really just kind of understand what we're talking about. We're talking about a community building that's open almost 100 years old. And I think it's very important for our community. I mean, it doesn't matter how many shiny apartment buildings we have. I mean, this is what makes Malden great. And like, this is just an example of a way that we can show that we're serious about preserving our community and making Malden a great place for everyone. And this is just an example. I would appreciate if you guys would please focus on that.
I think we focus on that. You're opening up the city without an employee here and letting groups in there. You're opening up the city to huge liabilities.
We've been in that building as far as I can remember, 30, 40 years of not having, opening it with the city.
Yeah, we got the senior center. We came down on this 3 years ago. Hot. Because we are hugely open on liability, not having people in. If somebody goes in, opens the building, you could go through any litany of things where they're closing the building up and a crime occurs on them. God bless us. I mean, we are not thinking straight here. We had this exact same issue with the senior center. And people giving it out, choosing, oh, I'll give it out to this group and I'll give it out, and nobody there. And we already had this debate. And we came down, here's how it's going to be done. Now we're reopening it on a center that we didn't deal with because it was closing. And we're going to have different rules for this building because, why?
I think we're entrusting the council to meet with these groups that were very active in this building and come up with a plan on how this is going to be done. You know, I feel confident. I know how active these groups were.
Nobody's questioning that. Nobody was questioning how active the group, how active the Girl Scouts were, who were using, I think, the senior center. But everyone had to pay, and everyone had to pay for a janitor to come in for the 2 or 3 hours of whatever it was. And if you can't fund that, then you have no business being open.
Well, I don't agree with you.
Okay?
Sorry, council. I don't agree with you. I don't think we have to have a janitor there. I think these people have enough volunteers that they can work this out. I mean, we can look at the negative side of anything. Anything can happen.
Why would the schools be the same way? Do you have to hire a janitor to use the
It's
school?
very different liability when you're talking about children being in the building. I mean, this is a very different situation. I understand.
There's
that
no
you're-
children at nighttime.
If I could just finish, I understand what you're talking about, and I guess like the legalese aspect of it is you could always argue this, but we're talking about reality here. And,
We are talking reality. You're not talking reality.
I mean, this
We
building
already had
worked-
this whole
how did this
debate
building work for
3
100
years
years
ago.
ago? How did this building work for 100 years?
We were lucky. We were lucky.
well, and in all due respect, it got shut down because we didn't get compliant. So that's why we're in the situation now.
Which is a different.
No, my point with the janitor wasn't because the council principal, my point is there is a little liability here. We got shut down because it was a handicap system. We've asked the board to look at the new proposal because we couldn't afford the other. Now we're gonna say, okay, you gotta, my father, as you know, was a builder. We get sued every week because somebody falls on a piece of chicken meat. You're gonna tell me that somebody in a wheelchair who has to go outside, never mind the complaint they're gonna say, but God forbid something happens when they're outside. My concern is there's nobody there from the city to document that or to make sure that that sidewalk, that little sidewalk they able to shovel. And I'm not saying anything bad about the groups, but we can't put all that liability in the group and say, well, how come you didn't shovel it? How come you didn't put sand on it?
By this logic, we should close every public park we have.
What?
By this logic, we should close every public park we have. We don't have a person standing at every park making sure people don't slip on every piece of sidewalk in the city. I get what you guys are talking about, but we are really splitting hairs here. We should have an attendant at every public sidewalk.
At every public building,
Every public
we
park.
voted 3 years ago
It's
at
proper.
every public building to have an attendant when they're open. But for this one, it's gonna be different, right?
I get your logic. I think that we
Well-
are getting lost in what this really means. I mean, I understand your logic to a degree, but your logic can be applied to everything.
It was.
I think we-
No, this will change every other building.
That's our policy, right?
So what do you want to see, a janitor there?
Yeah. Yeah, the janitor
Every
or
time the
somebody-
building's open,
Every
every
time
time
the
the Pop
building
Warner
is open.
group meets?
That's correct. Just like the senior center, just like the school.
All due respect, he's all.
Council President.
Off this particular topic, but, and you might discuss this prior to my getting here, so I apologize if this question has already been asked and answered, but it is something that, once again, before I make any type of a vote next week, I want an answer to, because we are entering a budget cycle that's going to, cause us some trials and tribulations as to how we're going to spend our money. And we talked about the operating cost of the building, and, hopefully it will be a negligible amount. But has anyone from Ms. Rubin's group gone through the building to see if there are any other additional costs that need to be, they're associated with the upkeep of the building, such as what's the life of the roof? Are we going to need a new roof in 3 to 5 years, or is that something that's been replaced? I guess I'd like to know that the building is sound and that we're not looking at any type of, a request coming down the road at us for a new boiler, new heating system, new windows, new roof, a new wiring, et cetera. So I just kind of like, if you haven't, kind of your analysis of the building and the state of its repair currently, and if you see any major issues as with the building.
So real quick, I only got involved to let the contractors in to see the building. When they went out to bid, I was asked to just open the doors. I do know, so I have not been able to go through the building thoroughly. All I do know, what was done in the past, the original, I guess that CIP account initially was, there was a roof done, there was a huge roof done, and their chimney was different. But I have not, if no one's really asked at that point, I have not been through the building, the rest of the building.
Well, those are some good big ticket items, so it's nice to know that those
Those
have
were,
been,
yeah.
have been. But I would appreciate it if you would maybe, go in and just take a quick peek and come back to us and give us kind of a level of comfort that there's nothing that you see, imminent, or if there is, what it is and associated cost with it.
At least anything in plain sight.
Anything in plain sight, right, exactly, just so we know. Thank you.
Okay, we've got a motion that we voted on favorably. Try to come up with some costs on, approximate costs on what it might cost to electricity.
And if there's anything imminent that needs to be done.
It's my understanding that you had gone through the building a little bit, or no?
I went through with the contractors just to show them the scope of work.
But the roof was done, right?
Right, and I know that from prior. The roof was done at one time.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I actually took a walkthrough with Eric, and because I was concerned about what the state of the building would be after 2 years of it being closed. It's been heated regularly. There is no mold issues. That was one of the things I wanted to make sure, considering it was closed. From my understanding, I think we did take a look at the boilers, and the boilers were
That was upgraded as well, that initial.
so those are all, oh, sorry. So, yeah, I
You
did.
said that, sorry, but I'd like him to go in and really kind of look at it, knowing that he needs to back to council and just tell us if he sees anything else. So
Absolutely. Thank you.
that's his job.
Anything else? Motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn, second by Council Seeger.